welcome to the next episode on the Microsoft Defender XDR Zero to Hero webinar series. So this is the part two on how to get started with Microsoft Defender for Office 365. So 2 weeks back, we did the part one where we spoke about the plan one capabilities, and the goal for this session is to sort of pivot into the plan two capabilities on Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and go from there. So let's get started. So a little bit about the speakers here. So my name is Vignesh Ganeshan, and I work as an enterprise architect. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and MCT. I've been in the industry for almost close to 13 plus years now, been doing a lot of work on Microsoft 365 security, so on and so forth. With that, let me hand it over to Samik. Samik, over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Vignesh. And I'm another MVP on security alongside Vignesh. I work as a cloud security architect, and I written a book recently on one of the security topics. And I also love to talk about security and do contribute to Microsoft products, which probably all the customers who use Sentinel uses. So with that said, I will skip it back to Vignesh.
All right, thanks, Samik. All right, so let's keep moving. So I just want to begin by ensuring that I'm setting the right expectations for this webinar series, and this is something which we talk in all our sessions. So the targeted audiences for this webinar series are M365 admins and architects. If you're somebody who's coming from the Azure side of the house, so maybe you're a cloud engineer or an architect or a cloud admin, or maybe you're somebody who's working as an IT security professional. So no matter whichever background you're coming from, we do expect that you have a good amount of basic understanding of Microsoft 365 and Azure services, because we in this webinar series are not going to talk about the basics of Microsoft 365 or Azure. So this webinar is meant for somebody who already has the ground knowledge on M365 and Azure. So the end goal, so what are we trying to achieve out of this is to make sure that you get yourself familiarized with all the Microsoft Defender XDR products, implementation methods, licensing, and also the best practices in the industry that you should be following while implementing these tools. So key takeaways. So finally, a good understanding about Microsoft Defender XDR and the different products that are on different products and services in the suite. Why is even XDR important for an organization with cloud footprints, and what problem the different products in the Microsoft Defender XDR suite can solve for you? So that's basically the key takeaways. If at all you've been following all the sessions in this webinar series, you would clearly realize that that is exactly what we are trying to accomplish. We are trying to talk about each and every single product. How do you go about implementing it, and what is the value that you get out of each and every single product? So how do we plan to run this webinar series? Of course, so the first two sessions we were doing the introductory stuff, and from the last session onwards, we started to deep dive into each and every single product in the Defender suite. So last week we did the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plan 1. Today we'll be talking about the Plan 2 capabilities, and this is the part 2 of Defender for Office 365. So the goal is to have 12 to 15 sessions in this webinar series, and we are planning to do at least 2 or 3 sessions per product. So these are bi-weekly sessions on Saturdays at 6 p.m. IST. Of course, these sessions will be recorded and it will be published on my YouTube channel so that you can access it on demand at a later point. Each session, we are planning to run it for 60 minutes, wherein the first 50 minutes will be given for the session in itself, and the last 10 minutes will be allocated for Q&A. And at the end of each and every single session, we'll be sharing a Microsoft form, and this is for you to, scan and ask your questions, share your feedback, and so that way we'll get to know how we are doing. And also, if you have any questions based on the session that you just attended, you can ask in that form, and we'll discuss that in the upcoming session. All right, so here's the agenda which is planned for today, and it is a very crisp agenda for today. I'll begin by talking about and giving an overview of the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plan 2 capabilities. And then Samik has planned a wonderful demo on the Plan 2 capabilities, and we'll also be sharing some useful links. And finally, we'll open up for question and answers. All right, so Microsoft Defender XDR suite as a whole, I'm pretty sure in all our previous sessions I've been showing this slide. So basically, if you look at Microsoft Defender XDR, it is it's a unified defense which brings together or which can help you to take care of your hybrid identities, the endpoints in your organization, email and collaboration data, the data which is stored in your SaaS apps, and also the cloud workload. So think of it as one single suite which has all these products underneath it, which is going to help to take care of your identities, endpoints, data, cloud, apps, so on and so forth. So in the last weeks, and 2 weeks before, we spoke about the Plan 1 capabilities, wherein myself and Samik, did a deep dive on how to configure safe attachments, how to configure safe links, and also how to configure policy. So that's where we were spending most of our time on. So today we want to focus our time more on the Plan 2 capabilities. Of course, there is a lot of capabilities in Plan 2. So we are trying to limit this session only to the top 3 capabilities. So which means we are planning, a part 3 also as a part of MDO. So in today's session, we'll be talking about attack simulation training. Then under the automate, investigate, and respond piece, we'll be talking about threat tracker and threat explorer. And in the part 3, which is planned 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about the remaining core capabilities. Because what we felt that it will be too much for us to bring or talk about all the plan 2 capabilities in one single session. So we thought that, it would be much more beneficial for the audiences, to split this into two, and so that's easy for you to digest, everything that's been said here. So SKUs that include the MDO Plan 1 and Plan 2. So, I'm pretty sure some of you might have been following the webinar series and started spinning up your demo environments. If you haven't done this already, so these are the SKUs that you would need to plan if at all you're, trying to do a demo alongside with us, or even if you're trying to, adopt this capability for your environment, for your production environment. So it should be either running Office 365 E5, A5, or G5, or Microsoft 365 E5, A5, G5. Similar way, even the Microsoft 365 E5 security, the Microsoft 365 F5 security and compliance, or Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So these are the SKUs which gives you the MDO Plan 1 and Plan 2 capability. If at all you're trying to understand, what are the SKUs which are specific to Plan 1 and what are the SKUs which are specific to Plan 2, I would suggest just go back to the YouTube and I think the very second session that we did on this webinar series is demystifying Microsoft Defender XDR licensing. So that session should give you a good understanding of all these different licenses, which plan falls under which SKU. So that way you'll be able to understand which SKUs offer me the MDO Plan 1 capability and which SKUs offers me the Plan 2 capabilities. All right, so with that being said, let's talk about attack simulation training, which is a plan. Simulation training is nothing but it's a tool. You can call it as a tool or a capability, which is part of your Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plan 2, which is going to help to run realistic attack scenarios in organizations, right? So when I say realistic attack scenarios, these are not like real attacks. So these are simulated attacks that can help to identify and find vulnerable users before a real attack impacts their bottom line. So what I mean by this is, like, often a time you would be seeing in your organizations wherein you would be receiving an email which more or less looks legitimate. Um, and sometimes it so happens that you're so caught up with your work, you wouldn't pay close attention to the sender's address, or you wouldn't pay close attention to the email body. It looks so legitimate, and maybe you're caught up with something else. You would just go ahead and click on a link. And the next thing you notice is you would be getting, a small pop-up in your screen saying that, hey, you have to go and take this training, right? So these are some sort of simulation trainings which your organization is running. It could be from the cybersecurity team or whichever team in your organization is responsible for doing this, right? So, they run these attack simulation trainings just what are things that you should be following when you're a part of an organization, right? Because you need to understand that email is always considered to be the top priority or the top first threat vector, and those are the ones which the attackers goes after, right? If they want to take over a company, they try to send all these phishing emails, and if one user clicks on it and then they try to get access to them from that, they just go on and cause as much as damage they want to the entire company. So that's what the attack simulation training offers. So Samik has planned a detailed demo on how you can do these attack simulation trainings using the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 portal. If at all you're somebody who's been doing this on Mimecast or Proofpoint, this would pretty much make sense to you. Even they have a similar kind of capability using which you can run these attack simulation trainings. A couple of things which I want to talk about specific to this is, so basically we use some social engineering techniques to create an attack, which Samik will be talking about, and he'll be doing a demo. So this supports even on-prem mailboxes. So if you're somebody who's using Exchange on-prem, you just need to understand that it is supported, but then the functionality is going to be very, very limited as opposed to what you would get on the cloud side. Because I think predominantly this was a capability which was designed for the cloud world as opposed to the on-prem. So when you're trying to do this for on-prem, you're gonna see some limited functionalities. So there are no PowerShell commandlets as of today to manage attack simulation training. Everything that you do would be on the UI. So available regions, it's available on APAC, Europe, and also North America. And it's also available in GCC and GCC high environments. Of course, it's not available in DoD environments as of such, but if you're a customer who's running GCC and GCC high environments, so attack simulation training is available there also. And in terms of required permissions, you would be needing global administrator privileges, security administrator, attack simulation administrator, or attack payload author permissions. And there is a detailed article on the required permissions. Of course, in an organization, you're not going to get all these permissions just right off the bat, right? So there are going to be different RBAC policies. So there is a proper article in Microsoft Learn which talks about the list of permissions one should have to make use of attack simulation training. Maybe when I'm on the useful links category, which is planned towards the end of the session, I'll share those links. And I'll also post this on the YouTube recording, description section so that you can go and see it for yourself. Now, the next tool which I want to talk about is threat trackers. So as the name itself says, this is something where you can go ahead and build your queries so that you can track the threats which is happening in your organization, right? And so you can, these are things that you can either do automatically or even manually. And Samik will be talking about how you can go ahead and make use of this tool so that you can have, you can configure these queries and which in return helps you to, export all these or to query all the threats which is happening in your environment. So in terms of the permissions, there is a link there because there are a lot of permissions when it comes to threat trackers. As I said, I'll be sharing the useful links section there, which talks about the required permissions that one should have to make use of this tool. Now, the next tool is the Threat Explorer. So whatever you're configuring in Threat Tracker, whatever queries you're configuring in Threat Tracker, you can go ahead and fetch the report of those queries on the Threat Explorer. And I think the name is pretty intuitive in that sense. It pretty much makes sense, right? Threat Tracker is the place where you would configure all these queries, and Threat Explorer is the place wherein you can go and find the output of all the queries that you have configured in your Threat Tracker. Now, there are two pieces here. You have threat tracker and real-time detections. So what's the core difference here is Threat Explorer is something that you would get with Plan 2, and real-time detections is something that you would get in your Office 365 Plan 1. Pretty much both of them offer the same kind of capabilities, but of course in Threat Explorer, you get to have some more features, which is not present in real-time detections. Right. And if you can closely look, I've also mentioned that things such as more views, more property filtering, including the option to save queries and more actions. So these are something which is not available in your real-time detections, but your Threat Explorer offers it because it's a Plan 2 capability. And with that, I think it's time to go ahead and see these tools in action. So let me go ahead and hand it over to Samik. Samik, over to you for a demo.
Thank you, Bignesh, and I will share my screen, and if you could confirm it's visible and I am clear.
Yeah.
All right. So as usual, we come to our favorite security.microsoft.com URL, which brings us to a Microsoft Defender XDR portal. And right now I'm at the home page, and after this what we are going to do is use the left navigation and scroll down to a place where we go to email and collaboration. And as Vignesh had mentioned throughout the slide, we'll start with an attack simulation training. And if I click on the link, you can see on the right hand side the attack simulation training feature loads in. And when it loads in, it by default comes up with an overview page. And by default, overview means it has a summary of everything it has to offer for. So that's where you can see a couple of recent simulation names. And if you click on them, some of them completed, some of them, for example, in progress, which I created, let's say today, right? And going further, we are going to look at the simulation training reports and all other tabs over here. But before that, let us look at when you talk about launching a simulation, what it means, right? So we just gonna click on launch a simulation. And when you do that, obviously, from the given choice, right? Either it is credential harvest. So this means on what topic we are going to do the simulation, and just it's given that because it's a training, it is not real, it looks like real. So when you launch the training, rest assured that even if the user is clicking on this, there is no harm being happening to the environment or to the user. This is totally done through a controlled environment, right? So let's go with credential harvest, for example, and then I would go next. And when you go next, I'd say webinar demo to cred. Just give it a name. You can be as specific as you want, and it's always good to add a description. I'm just using the same as the name. Then we're gonna go next, and when you go next, you can also observe in the left navigation, we can see the wizard and the progress. Bignesh, you're saying something?
No.
All right. All right. So in the left navigation, you can see things are kind of showing the progress as well, that how far we are configuring them. And when you come to this third section, which is called selecting the payload, that means what exactly the payload or the malicious activity or thing should happen. So let's say we know that Black Friday offer is really, really common. Maybe not in right time, but for example, right, we can have global payload, we can have, tenant payloads as well if we want to. Right now there's nothing configured. You can create it on your own, which I'm going to also show you when to create for. You can use this screen too. But coming back to the global payloads, I'll again go to Black Friday. You can always send a test just to see how it basically looks like. And also when we are in the screen, right, based on Microsoft stats, it also shows that predicted compromise rate. So you can always go with the higher rate by sorting in this, and then let's say we say American Express password reset, because this is where this kind of payloads, we've used the right way in training, people are getting compromised more. So this can be a good candidate for us to select. So I'm going to select again the American Express now and quickly send a test. It says clicking on this, just a standard notification that it's going to send a mail to the logged in user, which is my mailbox. So I'm going to confirm it, and just once it confirmed, leave it like that, and then it was sent. I'll switch to my mailbox in a moment and show you, but just click on next for now. When you click on next for now, there is another important fact that when we are basically conducting the simulation, right, it's obviously necessary that we always don't need to send everybody an attack simulation. Let's say you have an organization where there are some development testers, then there are some sales and marketing teams, right? So we need to really figure out what are the group of people need which kind of training. It's not that everybody needs the same training, right? So that's where we can say include specific users or groups. You can import as well, or maybe if there is something which you want everybody to experience, then you can always go to everyone. Once I go to everyone, in this case, then and you can see the guest users are excluded because that's not a part of tenant, right? So that's why they are not considered. And we'll go next. And even once we selected everything, if we want to exclude something, for example, there are some IT admins and then some admin accounts, which we know these are service accounts and things like that. We don't want them to be included. We can just exclude them for the target and by checking the checkbox. And when you check the checkbox, you can see you get an option to exclude the users. So I'm going to uncheck it for now and then go to next. And then you exactly see when you simulate this attack, right? Attack is some number one thing. When the attack happens, when exactly what kind of training you want to assign to them. So it's basically by default, you want to want them to go to one of your custom training module you have developed, no training or Microsoft recommended experience. So let's go with the default, assigning training for me as well. Or you can select training courses and module for myself, right? So either you just fix that what kind of training will be assigned, that's Microsoft recommended, or you can let user choose it what kind of things they are going to experience based on a list of things. Then due date is, there are three options: 7 days, 15 days and 30 days, which is an ideal or recommended phases of running a simulation attack, and that's where you see these three options. So I'm going to go with last 7 days for a moment. and then hit next again. And then once I do that, right, so fundamentally there is something, select phishing landing page. So when the email will be sent, right, we can also configure, right, when the link goes, when they click on the link, right, user clicks on the link, what exactly the link should take to. We can go via default one. We can always use a custom URL, like for example, if you already have a phishing, or any other landing page setup, you can do that, right? Or we can always go by the Microsoft default ones, right? And we can also add the payload indicators to email as well if you want to, right? But right now let's uncheck it, and then we can select any one of them. And when you select them, you can obviously say the other settings, the language and things like that, and go to tenant landing page if you want to change it, or if you want to add something specific. But I would like to keep it global and generic for everyone, let's say. That's why we go to global landing pages, and I would just give it a moment to load, and again select the same section. Once I select, it's all good to go, and it's next. And when I hit next, it says that select end user notification. You can say don't deliver, which is not really a good idea to begin with. Always go for Microsoft details, default notification, and then we select the language, and when exactly that notification should be delivered. So in the delivery preference, again, we can say after simulation is over, during simulation, and I'm going to look at during the simulation. And then once the simulation has happened, let's say someone has clicked on the phishing links that they fall in the prey like of the getting phished, right? We can say that how often we should remind the training on. So we can say twice a week or weekly. Let's go for weekly and go to next. So in the next, it says launch this simulation as soon as I'm done. So that means it will right away start the moment we finish it. And then we can also schedule it if we want to. For example, let's say coming back to the same Black Friday sale, right? You want to configure something for the time of Black Friday, you can definitely launch it just a week or two before that, right? Otherwise, if it is something generic, or if you're into looking at it and experimenting, exploring it, always go ahead and then launch it right away by selecting specific set of users, not to everyone. Then you have to see a number of days in this console to make sure that how long the simulation is going to run, which is like minimum 2 days. You can go further, and it also says a date. And if you enable the time zone delivery, that 2 days will be like enabled according to user's time zone, right? So let's go on and check, say next. And then once everything is set up, like as usual, this is the first review simulation screen, wherein you get to review every settings and configuration you have configured, and then you can edit them. And if you still want to do a kind of cross check, you just send a test, and it says that it'll be sending a test to the logged in user. So I say confirm, right? And it is being sent. So let me hit submit and give this tool time to kind of configure it. In the meantime, we'll go to our email, and you can see, right, how that looks like. So, and how sophisticated. So it says that you recently called us for, like, basically this is a standard phishing, right? And it comes from mesharepoint.com. So there is no absolute clue that it can be a phishing. But coming back to the best practices, yeah, you should always make your test harder and harder for the user so that they really get trained for the real-time scenario. But also there are a few checks as an admin or as a user we should be always doing, right? For example, if you look at the mail starts from the center, right? uh, or maybe look at the spelling mistakes, which it's hardly difficult to find, because it's really meant to fish you and for training. But ideally we should follow certain things, like look at the senders, look at the emails, right? And look at anything which you see unusual. So that's how it is, right? So let's see if I click on this. So the moment I click on this, um, it goes, and then it says ping successful. That means I'm a prey now because the attack was successful, right? And let me go back to because that was a training piece. So I will just say click again to the real one too. This is just to give some, ping backs to Microsoft. So, and then once done, it says it's been launched and done. So that's how basically you can create a simulation from the beginning, right? Then let's say it's an running environment, right? You have that simulations created. You want to look at that. That's where we go into the simulations tab, and that fundamentally gives us the number of simulation has happened over time here. As you can see, there are like quite a few I have creating since some time: start date, end date, what is the platform, and what is the type of simulation. So mostly I have stick to all social engineering, and it is all created by me. And you can see for each the prediction score is given by Microsoft. And because I have not interacted to any of the mails, that's why the actual compromise score is 0 so far. Maybe the recent one will update shortly, but you can see all the scores are also available. That means you can really compare, right? Are the org users really up to the mark? Like for example, in a best case scenario, the predicted compromise rate should be always higher than your actual compromise rate. That means your organization users are really well trained uh, to not to get phished, right? Then coming back to the training, as we talked about when we created the attack simulation, right? That it says that there are some Microsoft recommended trainings and things like that. You can always have your own training plan created like this. As I say, when I created one of the existing, and then it also says that how many are created, and it basically says that within this training activity the notification is being sent, but there's nobody who has completed training, maybe because I just sent it like 30 minutes back, right? So let's close this for now. Then obviously by the name itself, the report says that it's fundamentally going to give us a report around everything. So simulation coverage, for example, this much of users have not experienced simulation. Nobody completed because it just happened. I've just kept it intentionally to show you 0 because it spikes up as and when kind of do and behave that. Behavioral impact on compromise rate: 2 users less susceptible to phishing. So that means people who has actually interacted, they are smart enough not to get phished. And you can also see 5% better than predicted rate, which I just talked about in the overview, right? Or the list of simulations. So this gives you a kind of confidence by how you run it and what your reports look like. We can obviously go to each and every report by going down their detailed, but for the interest of time, I'll just quickly jump on to the next tab, which is automations, right? So automation is something by the name of it. If we combine the attack simulation and automation, what can be done is I'm also creating automation, and let me show you what it exactly means. So when you create an automation, right? So I would say webinar demo to automation. And as usual, I try to keep the same as description. And in the left hand side, as you see, this is looks somehow similar to your attack simulation, but let me show you the difference why it is set at automation. So you can select multiple, right? That's the mean. So I'm going to select, let's say, everything here, then go next. Then either I can manually select the payload for the login page, right? And then let me select all, or you can randomize as well. Let me come back what randomize means. It says you may have to manually select up to 20, or you can select randomize from Microsoft to choose the pace. Payloads will be the scope of simulation, right? You can also map a login page for the credential harvest and link attachment. So let me manually select all, as this is less than. Yeah, this is good. And also you can always go by the higher predicted compromise rate to make sure that your trainings are really, really strong. Then go next. You can see it's only 20, so I'm gonna unselect that, check a couple of them, and then go next. So why that pop-up came in? Because in the previous technique, if I go back, I have selected everything, right? So in that case, I have to kind of select, make sure that for every category at least I have selected one. So that check is also being done. So just to avoid the confusion, let me randomize it and click on next. and webinar demo app 2. Let me also come back what we can get that what app logo looks like, right? And then once it is fished, or once this happens, right, what exact permission the app would be assigned to. So let's say send mail a user. So that app should be capable of, if it is compromised, if the campaign is successful, then it should have this permission in the scope. Then go to next. As usual, include all users in my organization or specific. Let me go with all for now. Go next. Then I would go for the same settings. Microsoft, assign the training recommended, due days 7 days. Next, global landing page, add a things like here. So we can add one landing page here and click on next, like the usual one. I'd say obviously I want it to be delivered, the notification, and during the simulation, and send a reminder on a weekly basis if they click on that. Now, if I go next, right? So this is where the difference is. Simulation schedule, right? Either we can say randomize or we can say fixed. So once you say fixed and go to next, you can see it is asking for a launch date, right? And let me give you, at least it has to be starting not before tomorrow. Automated occurrence. So that means the initial simulation what he created, that's for a single time. Once it is done, it'll be closed. But if you really want to create a schedule, right, let's say if you want to test your users on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, ideally it should be on a quarterly basis at least, but you can always change what to be the frequency in, right? And if you look at the previous randomized example, so the randomization will happen by the defender itself. So definitely user will not be seeing the same content. So once you schedule anything on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, it keeps on happening for all the users. So let me click on monthly, and it also says that what is the interval. So for example, if an automation is sent for month 1, then it should skip 1 month, and it should also define the date when it should go there. And then where it ends, you can also define the end by selecting an end date at least, or you can say that run at least 10 times, right? So that means it will run like for next 20 months and something like that. Then go to next. Then what exactly to be done? How do you launch it? Use unique payloads with an automation so that I make sure that everybody receives one thing at a time. Target all the selected users in every run simulation. That means this is the checkbox wherein whenever simulation happens, it happens for all the users. If I don't select it, it will be also randomized. Target repeated offenders. Yeah, how many times, if they are offenders, they are not up to the mark, how many times they should be repeated, right? And then enable region aware delivery. That means that's to do with your Outlook settings and time zones. Then if I go next, as usual, the last page for the review, and I can submit it. Once I submit it, what's going to happen? We technically built a schedule which is going to run over and over time, depending on the configuration we have done, right? And keep on doing the simulation trainings around whatever we have done, right? So this is one on simulation automation. The similar concept also is available for payload automation. So let me show you the one I've already created. So it's type payload and then description, run condition, on what condition it should run. That's the primary criteria. So if I click on edit on this, so I'll let and you can see that like it also opens as a wizard. So I'll go to next. Specific domains, we have just given the same domain. We can add another condition, what it should be, and then go next, and basically have this payload automation as well, right? So these are the automations we can turn on and turn off, and then play as an automated manner, and then almost automate our attack simulation training for our users within the organization. Next, the next piece is also really important, where we can say content library. So you can see the moment you switch to content library, it has 3 tabs: global payloads, tenant payloads, MDO recommendation. So by default in global payloads, you can see the things, whatever is available by default, right? And then always we can create a copy and then customize your own. And then if you really want to see how it looks like, voicemail from Paul and Marshall. So simulations launched. Do we have any simulations done yet on this? No, because nothing is configured. And as you can see, the signature says it's a phishing one. right? And it also says that it's a social engineering and credential harvest. So that's how it's going to be. And if you really want to copy and create your own from here, you can definitely do that, right? That's totally on the payload piece of it. Then we can also look at tenant payloads, which is very specific to your tenant. You can go to your recommendation, things like that. Now, in the left hand side, as you see in the content library, we were brought into payloads, but we also have another content library for other things like login pages. For example, you're building a phishing attack and you want it to have such a login page which is very very customized for your own, right? So let me try to create on LinkedIn login page, create a copy. So what's going to happen is you can just I'm not really doing a super UI stuff here, but let me create a LinkedIn login page, go to next, and then make this, I don't want to do text, and then let's try to add a compromise button. That means that's how I customize, and instead of submit, I'd say free premium account, just to give like a bait, right? Wherein you can technically you know do anything to your user. You can be really creative to make sure that your things are right away on that. And then if I go next, review and preview login page, you see this is how it's going to look like. And let me close this for now, submit it. So now this review login page, I'll click on done. If you launch as launch a simulation, you can definitely use that particular login page, right? So that's how you can replicate login pages, payloads, phishing landing pages, right? And the training modules on your own. So that's how it can be customized, and you can enrich your own content library to build very specific things on your organization, right? So that's how basically you can modify the content library as well. Now, let me quickly go to training modules too. Training modules, obviously, I think I've created one. Let's see, it pops up. Yeah, so these are the things already available, right? Training content and things like that. If you want to have your own trainings, you can always go ahead and create them. The moment I say that, yeah. And I think this is where it should be like you have to choose in one of the things from the content library. Not everything is kind of dynamic or can be copied or replicated, because the training is kind of, if you have a custom one, you have to link it to the custom training during your attack simulation or automation, right? But other than that, you should be able to create all other options here. Let's also go to end user notifications too. And if I see, you can see there is a copy option here. So for email, login, payload, phishing, you have a copy, but for training modules, either you use from the content library or link it to an external training, right? Now, the next, but the last one is settings, repeater offender ones. That means by default, what is the threshold settings for a particular simulation, and then what is the threshold settings for a training threshold, right? That's how it basically have that other settings. You can change them, you can alter them, and if you can update them if you need to. With that said, I would say this is what was the brief demo around attack simulation training. Now, let's take a step back, saying that attack simulation is really nice thing, and we can be proactive, plan our attack simulations, and then let the user be aware of how it looks like, and they are really really getting used to it, and they will be very well versed to make sure that they are not responding or not not getting into a trap of any phishing emails or any attacks. Now, there's also one thing, right? That we look at our threat, and then we can configure certain things, and we can review things in an environment on a regular basis. So for that, I would quickly jump onto the Explorer navigation in the left one. And once we get on the Explorer navigation, right? So as an admin or as a responsible person for Defense for Office, right? You might need to come here and then do some searches, like for a user, for a domain, for anything which is applicable, right, on a given date. And there will be times wherein you need to do it on a regular basis. Then it's like, it's not that every day you come into Explorer and then you can keep on doing the searches, right? You can actually save them. And let me also show you. For example, right, I've just get this particular one. Like, you can always add filters around sender address, subject, and things like that, and refresh it. And let's say you want this query to be, you want to revisit this on a daily basis, right? So you don't need to come here and every time kind of see that and then run the query and configure it. You can technically save this query. And once I save it, I'd say, and either you can set it, okay, I want it to be on for exact dates. I want the query to be generic and dynamic, to be relative for every 30 days from one day, anything you want to. Let's say I want to go for last 9 days, right? Also, we track this query. Tracking will enable, I'll show you where the tracking comes in, and with tracking, it keeps on track the changes as well. So let me hit save here. Once I save it, it says saved successfully. Now, let's say that's a query or that's a requirement you are kind of coming and filling it on a daily basis. And it's in all emails. You can definitely go to malware tab. You can definitely go to, there's nothing seen as such. You can go to phishing tab. You can go to content malware URL kicks and then create the same kind of query. Once it is created, you can obviously go to the threat tracker now. Once you come to the thread tracker, as you see, right, it's all basically, where it's never executed. The recent one, it just got created, but the last two which I created this morning, it's going to be there as a saved query. And then if I want to go ahead and explore it, I'll just click on the link. So it opens it in a new tab, and then that will load the exact filter as a saved query and show me the results. So if there are cases and there are queries which we need to run on a regular basis, you know, um, that's how we should be saving it and looking into the threat tracker, right? So I'll just give it a moment to load and go back to the previous one. Now, also in the tracked queries, if I go, obviously there are two things which I click on tracked. You can see they are kind of available, and you see trend today versus prior week. This is the fundamental difference of a track query. So you can see that, right? And also today's message count and prior day's message count. Obviously the latest one will always show -1 because it just created a while ago. And if you look at the other ones, because it is created today, right? So today's message count is 17 and yesterday there's nothing, because this technically there's no message count either, right? So that's how you can actually come back and look at your saved queries anytime you want to, and then keep on clicking the link. And as you see here, it came back to, let me get to all campaigns. So that's how I clicked on this, and then it landed on this page, right? So with that said, I will just give it back to Vignesh to continue on that, and that's the demo we have planned for specifically today, right? All right. So I can stop sharing for a moment. Vignesh, you there? All right. In the meantime, I think we have a question. I can also take that. So it says, what simulation around would be to show UL user access logs. So there are a few things, right? For example, if you launch a simulation thing and that clicks on a URL, you obviously get that, on a URL clicks, because this is primarily on MDO, right? So everything is mostly targeted to your email, and whatever activity you do, either you get that in message trace and your URL click event. That kind of complements all your activity over here, right? And then what happens is, after that, whatever activity is in being done, you can check in other audit logs. Let's say after you're being compromised, you kind of either go and look at your audit logs to look at if the user has really done something or deleted something, and that's how the correlation should happen. But coming to the context of attack simulation, because we know the fact that this is a totally secure and controlled simulation. So it's a simulation, right? So with that said,
Hello.
we might not. Yeah, Vignesh. So welcome back. So
Go ahead. Go ahead.
we might not need to actually do that, but if you really want to track what the user has done it, you can always go to unified audit logs and then check the user's activity with a combination of your message trace and URL clicks. Hope that answers. Yeah, over to you, Vignesh, now.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for the wonderful demo, Samik. I'm pretty sure that should have been really insightful about how these tools can be used in your organization. So of course you would have been able to clearly see the importance of attack simulation training. Now, one thing which I want to stress upon, and this was an interesting conversation which I was having with one of the IT directors, which I happened to meet in a conference last week. So in their organization, it was interesting what he said. So if there are repeated offenders, it so happens that if you're constantly a repeated offender for more than 2 times in that specific organization, you don't get to get your bonus. And if a repeated offender for more than 3 times, it turns out that you would get fired, right? So, I mean, of course, not every organization is going to be like this, but there are organizations which take this very, very seriously and forget about these strict penalties, right? These are part of some IT security policies that you need to follow when you're joining an organization. I'm pretty sure they would be educating this to you on the induction itself. So hereafter, every time you're getting these sort of emails, pay close attention to it. It might look so legitimate that you would fall prey to it, but as you start reading the sender's address or something in it might look like this isn't legitimate, right? So these attackers, they try to tip you off by creating something which is as legitimate as possible, but it is your job as an end user to make sure that that you're not falling prey to it. And of course, if you're somebody who's in the role of configuring these things, just try to challenge your users as much as possible to try to make it as sophisticated so that you can see who really is falling prey to these things. So with that, let me move on. So the next thing which I want to share is some useful links. And of course, I'll be sharing this in the chat, and I'll also put this in the YouTube video description so that you can go ahead and make use of this. This should help you to get started with all these 3 tools that we discussed in detail today: the attack simulation training, the threat tracker, and also the threat explorer. And and you can start playing around with this. So with that, thanks a lot. Thanks for being wonderful audience. And if at all you have any questions, now would be the time to bring up those questions. So our next session is going to be, we are also planning to do a part 3 because there are a few more tools in the Microsoft Defender for Office 365, which we need to cover. So the part 3 is planned for April 13th at 6 p.m. IST. So please do join without fail. So with that, if at all there are any questions, now would be the time. And if at all you want to scan this QR code and give us some feedback or ask any questions to us, feel free to do that also. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so I